We're now joined by Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports. He joins us on 365 Sports. Shehan, we have discussed this, what is going to be now 16 teams next year. We know that. That was kind of out in the sky. But I saw where you were a little bit maybe, wait a minute, how many automatic qualifiers or whatever else? What are your thoughts about the way that they appear to want to set up the 16 teams and who gets in?
Well, I think to me, the idea of multiple bids for a league is just kind of a joke because it ultimately ends up kind of getting rid of a level of competition, right? I mean, for example, last year we have 12 teams in the college football playoff. We're planning to have in 2025 12 teams as well. Well, what do you mean, for example, that we would be forced to put a fourth SEC team in or a fourth Big Ten team in? I mean, the reality is these two leagues especially are hoarding a vast majority of the resources of college football. But now, on top of obviously having all the money, access to all of the players and resources, you additionally want to guarantee spots for them as well. I mean, most years, especially in a 16-team college football playoff, like we're probably going to get 4 from the Big Ten, 4 from the SEC, 2 from the ACC and the Big 12. Why do we need to go about guaranteeing it? I mean, there are going to be some years where the 4th team in, let's say the Big Ten, is just like the 21st best team in the country. Why do we need to guarantee spots for that team? So to me, it just borders on uncompetitive. And I just think that there's really just no need for this. And I think that this really will become kind of an existential issue for the college football playoff if it's instituted.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a way to stop the train on the tracks for this? Like PR, like kind of calling them out? I mean, it's not the best plan, but it's a plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a big part of it, right? I mean, this was proposed once before, and the backlash to it, I think, really surprised some of the stakeholders in the room. Obviously, this is being pushed by the Big Ten and the SEC, and I think that even they were like, oh, okay, maybe there's a little bit more pushback to this than expected. Now, one thing to keep in mind through all of this is that everything at this point is a negotiating play, because right now, there is not a formalized structure in place for 2026 and beyond. And as opposed to 24 and 25, where you needed a unanimous vote in the room in order to get anything done to change the contract, that won't be the case starting in 2026. And the Big Ten and SEC do understand they have the ability to drive the bus on negotiations heading forward. So maybe this just ends up being a negotiating play long term. But I think it really will take, hey, you know what, people standing up and kind of saying, this is a mess of a system. This is something that we do not want. I don't think that there's the same level of fervency per se in American sports fans as for something like when obviously European soccer proposed a Super League. But the reality is that they do have to be, to a certain extent, beholden to the fans because they are the people who are ultimately the reason for these big television contracts.
Shehan, if you're looking at this as though it's just going to go through, is there any way you can spin it as a positive if you're Brett Yormark or Jim Phillips in the ACC and say, well, twos? I mean, we got one last year for the Big 12, and we probably wouldn't have had 2, or maybe would have had 2. It would have been like the very last entry, even if it was 16 a year ago. So, I mean, is there a way to kind of spin this as a positive or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the positive, certainly, if you are the ACC and the Big 12, is that it does formalize still this idea that there is guaranteed representation for your conference on the biggest stage, that you will have multiple teams every year. And I mean, look, Brett Yormark has been pretty open about it. You know what, like, we want to have consistent teams rise to the top, to put themselves in the national conversation, to become signature brands for the conference. And when you do have 2 teams from the Big 12 coming in, I do think that that will allow that to happen. Again, you know, you'll have years where you have Arizona State making it a couple years in a row, where you have Baylor making it a couple different times. But to me, I think that it's just offset by the idea of, hey, you know what, like, what you really want as a conference is to prove that you can earn your way there. And again, I mean, like, from my perspective, like, look at Arizona State last year. Like, Arizona State took Texas to the absolute wire. They went to double overtime. They had every ability to go win that game. I want Big 12 and ACC teams to earn it just as much as I want the third and fourth team in the SEC or Big 10 to do so.
Yeah, and that's a conversation been having for like the last year of like, you can have Redbird Capital all you want, you can have, whatever, but like the solution, especially the Big 12, because the ACC, I know like it's stable for now, but it's just go win games. Like Arizona State needs to beat Texas. TCU can't get embarrassed by Georgia, so that it's just about winning, right? There's no other magic solution other than that to get the respect and then maybe have the ability to later on go, no, we deserve 3 playoff teams because we've done this, this, and this the last 5 years.
Well, and even just think about it, right? Heading forward and think about like maybe on the college basketball side, there are lots of leagues that obviously get an auto bid to the NCAA tournament. What ultimately makes a difference is the teams and the leagues that manage to go over what's allotted to them, right? The teams that are either multi-bid leagues or the leagues that produce teams that win games in the NCAA tournament. And so, look, if you're the Big 12 or the ACC or even the Big 10 or SEC, I mean, look, the SEC hasn't played for national championship in either of the last 2 years. Like, you can guarantee as much as you want. It won't necessarily change the perception if your teams don't have some success when they get there. So like you said, ultimately, you just have to go out and win games, because if you don't, I mean, again, last year, like the Big 12 only had one team in the dance and they won 0 games. It doesn't matter how close they got. Ultimately, it's going to be what happens once you get there.
But if the Big Ten and SEC are going to build this scheduling alliance, and the SEC adds a 9th game in the conference, that's 9 there. Then the Big Ten game, that's 10. Then there's going to be, a natural long-term rivalry. That's 11. There is no room for anybody to get a chance to play them that actually is the ones of the programs that need to play them.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that is concerning right now if you are outside of the Big Ten and SEC. But, here's the reality too, right, is that I think that when you look at the past couple of years, I mean, again, we have an example of BYU going on the road and beating SMU, and a college football playoff team, and finishing 11-2 and still not making the college football playoff. So while, yes, I think that these regular season non-conference games and missing out on those opportunities will be something that's really frustrating, I do think that ultimately it just feels different for people once it is in the postseason, when you can't make the case like, oh, it was a team that was figuring itself out. Oh, it was a team that hadn't found its sea legs as yet. So I do think that ultimately, again, it doesn't necessarily matter too much, because you will get those opportunities in the postseason.
I'm wondering if like the people who run Applebee's like menu run college football, and that like they're like, oh, you can eat riblets, like, okay, 16-team playoff, and then we're gonna have play-in games. But none of us really asked for this at all. Like, we asked for a playoff, and 16 teams wouldn't be, terrible. They would just only have one season of 12 so far. But like, it's just like they're kind of stuffing like all this regardless of anybody asking for it.
Well, and we got all of this, and we don't have $5 margs to give something to the casual fan as well. No, I think that there definitely is a level of saturation that we're heading towards. Look, last year, I think that every year is going to be a little bit different in terms of I guess how many teams, quote unquote, like deserve to be there and are truly title caliber. And some of this, look, like this is the first year of the new system, and I think that college football will also adjust a little bit. Like you see Miami and SMU and some of these other teams, they're starting to elevate themselves to where, maybe we will have 12 to 16 teams that deserve to be there. But like, nobody should have felt bad about the fact that last year Alabama was not part of the dance, right? Like nobody should feel bad about the fact that South Carolina was not a part of the dance with the way that they ultimately ended the season. And so, I think that if we keep making it bigger, one, we create a situation where Alabama, like, because I think the idea of the regular season being kind of devalued, I think it's a little overrated, but like the place where it's going to become more pivotal is with some of these huge brands. Like Alabama's season is not going to matter if you can go 9-3 and kind of look bad all year long, and it just doesn't matter to where they're ranked because they're going to be in the college football playoff. I think that people will feel that. I think fans will feel that. I certainly think that Alabama fans will feel, well, why are we paying all this money to watch these regular season games if you're essentially like trying to make our season idiot proof in a lot of ways? And the other thing too, and like, we might be a far ways off from this, I have no idea, but like, while obviously everybody loves more football, like there is going to be a point of saturation where you just sort of start saying, well, like, is this even a good product anymore? Is this even something that's entertaining to watch? Is this a good use of my Saturday? Or are we kind of just wasting time right now with the type of matchups that they're kind of pushing on us? So it is a balance that I think that football has to find for itself. I don't think we're there yet. But like you said, the bigger and bigger and the more meaningless every single game gets, like it's something that I think is an existential issue for college football.
The NFL keeps adding games to their schedule and decreasing, of course, what were meaningless and sometimes a waste of time preseason games because of the money. So I just went blank. I think I was getting ready to ask you. You have a follow-up?
Sean, do you have any thoughts on politicians getting involved in trying to curtail NIL? And, is this just a big headline grab? Is this something that's actually realistic? Where do you stand, and what's kind of the responses that you've heard?
Yeah, what's interesting, right, is like, I think that there is sort of a sincere desire to fix some of this stuff, right? Like, you see in the past couple of weeks, President Trump has heard from Nick Saban, has heard from Tommy Tuberville. Cody Campbell, the mega booster over at Texas Tech, apparently has a good relationship with the administration. So, like, I think that there are people in these rooms who legitimately do want to see things fixed. And I think that there will be a legitimate effort from, this new commission to come about to try to fix some things. What I am curious about long term is I've watched, frankly, too many of these hearings, right? Where you have these senators and people get up and talk about some of the issues involved. But like, I don't know if there's a true understanding about how complicated it is, especially when you start involving the federal government. I think that one of the things that had come out, of course, was the idea that maybe President Trump would consider an executive order. But here's the issue. All the things that are going wrong right now in college football have been caused by lawsuits, have been caused by constitutional issues or antitrust issues. An executive order doesn't necessarily reset the landscape from that perspective. So I think that it's going to get more complicated before it gets less so. The other thing that I'll say too, and look, I mean, everybody's going to have a little bit of a different opinion on this, but like the people who have the money and power to lobby in Washington are the most powerful stakeholders, the universities, the commissioners, the conferences, and not obviously the actual players who are going to be the most impacted by new laws coming in. So I think that there will be a renewed focus on it. My certainly hope is that there is a renewed negotiation, maybe, whether it is towards an actual bill being passed or whatever. I think that that's the longest term solution available. But right now, I mean, it's just going to be so up in the air, and it's going to be really dependent on what voices are actually allowed in that room.
All right. So let's say you have these 65 teams who are a part of the Power Four, whatever you want to call autonomy, including Notre Dame. And we've heard Jamie Pollard, he's been on our show many times, that, listen, we don't have the money. The $20.5 million, it's not like it's in some sort of like they don't have the money. Well, I mean, sometimes, you know what? You just can't play in the game. He said they will come up with the money, but they'll start from a deficit. Most of the 65, Shehan, I don't know how many of them have the $20.5 million to play with. I'm going to guess 35 or 40 maybe. So is it getting to a point where Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor, TCU, whoever, are putting in millions of dollars? Most of it used to be facilities and football ops. Now it's just to stay in the game. How long can they keep doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that that's also an existential question that some of these athletic departments need to ask is, you know what, like, do we feel like we need to just survive, let's say, this next round of realignment of, 6 or 7 years, and then maybe we can settle back? Or is this a new line item that you're going to need to have? I mean, because here's the reality, is that if it's 2031 and the ACC collapses or whatever, and the Big 12 has their television contract up, and a team is not fully funding that rev share and essentially is not contending at the highest level of college athletics, that's going to be kind of a death sentence to a program that doesn't have the ability to do it. Because, I mean, here's the reality, right? At this point, what we've heard is that all of the 16 Big 12 teams intend to try to hit that number. Now, again, we'll see when it actually comes time to actually write these contracts and actually spend this money. But that's what the message has been at this point from the Big 12 office. And I think that some programs are going to have to ask, like, are we going to be able to exist at this level? And like you said, facilities, I think, are going to be a far secondary consideration. It hasn't happened yet, but I imagine there will have to be a time where you start having these tough conversations about coaching salaries. Because here's the reality, is that there are teams even in the Big 12 that are paying their coaches $7 or $8 million when they are potentially trying to spend $20 million for their entire athletic department's revenue share. Is that something that ultimately is feasible long term? So I do think that ultimately it's going to force some programs to ask some really tough questions. And look, I mean, one of the things that was proposed by the new NCAA president, Charlie Baker, was essentially the idea of having an opt-in and essentially creating a class of football that's voluntary to add to, but requires you to essentially revenue share. Now, again, because this is coming through lawsuit and not from the NCAA, we're probably not close to something like that appearing in the short term. But I do think long term, these programs are going to have to decide, are we willing to put in what it takes to contend at the highest level? And if we're not, what does it mean?
Before we let you go, Shehan, I was in a Hobby Lobby in Murfreesboro, Tennessee last week with my wife and mother-in-law.
Of course.
I don't know. You probably don't know where this is going, but I came across this picture and I think you need to address it right here. This is the picture inside of a frame, and I walked past it, and I've known you for a long time. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, that's Shehan. Right there. I sent it to the guys and they were like, yeah, that's him. Do you have a side gig as a picture frame model?
I do not. I'm trying to think of the last time that I've been on a wooden bridge too. So I don't know. I don't think that anybody could have caught me in a more vulnerable moment, let's say. But that's a pretty weird one.
You are one of the snazzier dressers in the sports writer world.
No doubt.
I mean, and you've kind of always been that way. And so this guy is very sharply dressed. So I did a double take. I actually took it off the rack and looked, because I was like, it could have been from, like Ted, like before he got the good job, like he could have a friend that's like, hey, can you come and take this picture? And you're like, yeah, whatever, like, sure, if you want me to be in this picture, great. Here's $200. I don't care. But yeah, I mean, that could, I'll send it to you so you can show your wife and be like, hey, here we go.
Hey, AI is getting crazy. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Shehan, appreciate it, buddy. Good stuff. Thanks for your time today. We'll see you soon. All right. Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports, with us on 365.